So good morning, everyone. So first of all, I would like to congratulate Trescon, Salim to actually host this event. We don't really see much events in blockchain in Malaysia, so this will be definitely one of the big ones. And also all of you who actually managed to fight the KL traffic and actually get here in time. It's definitely an amazing view to see a full room and early in the morning, actually. Yeah, I think, as it says over there. So, interestingly, we have a very big topic to actually talk about, regulation. And I'm a last-minute fill-in if you were wondering why I do not look like the guy in the picture. So, I'll go on by introducing myself and maybe also introducing the panel right after this. So, my name is HARPREET MAAN. I run a company called Blockline Technologies. And we basically do blockchain development, and we work closely with some of the regulators on building some regulatory technology. And I think we'll start from ALDEN on introducing himself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is ALDEN Uy, and I'm from the Philippines. I'm the CEO of SPEZA DAX Management Corporation. It's actually what we do as a corporation is that we offer offshore virtual currency exchanges to be operated from the Philippines. So that's what we do actually. We can help companies by opening up their exchanges within the Philippines. And I'm here today to share with you our experiences in terms of dealing with regulators in the Philippines and how we've established our discussions with them, informing our self-regulating organization, and to the end of ensuring that the blockchain and the digital exchange will thrive as an industry in the future. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm KOHEI from Japan and Tokyo. I'm running the president of the Government Blockchain Association there. I'm also the founder of the KURIHARA. The association is from the US DC based. I'm based in Tokyo. What I'm doing is to make communities between the government and the private sectors. This is pretty important to know each other, how we can make a consensus. The community is key part of the knowledge sharing. We have a lot of the other chapters, right, in London, the Paris, and all the states, and Asia is a few, so why not to join us if you're interested? So the community is the next decisions in order to make sure what they needed each other from the private and public sectors. I'm very happy here today to share with you what I witnessed through my community organizing and the government stance how it looks like in the futures. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Tong. I'm the co-chairman of Hong Kong Blockchain Association. Last week, we hosted our annual summit at the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. My other role is with Madison Blockchain. We are one of the few very listed companies on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange that's transformed into a blockchain investment company. And we recently announced an investment into a Japanese crypto exchange called BitOcean. It's one of the 16 licensed by the Japanese FSA. So we are venturing into crypto exchanges in Japan. And in the early days of the internet, I was actually in the US. I did a lot of TCP/IP programming, centralized database work, and also did my NASDAQ company. I founded a company called PacificNet, listed on NASDAQ, and then eventually I sold the company and then moved into venture capital and angel investment business. So it's my pleasure to be here to meet many of you, and hopefully I'll see some good projects so we can participate together. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Oh, maybe does it work? Fine. Good morning, everybody. I am the first of the panelists from Malaysia, even though I might not look like one, but I am from here. So I am RENE. I am the chairman of the Access Blockchain Association, which is an association in Malaysia and Singapore. The Malaysian chapter has one of the main agenda points to keep the ecosystem sane as an opposite of insane, and support the healthy development and the understanding of the general public. What is this technology about? What is it not about? So that we can rip off several misconceptions which might lead to falling prey to adversaries or scammers which are lurking behind many corners, especially here in Southeast Asia. So the Access Blockchain Association, matchmaking, networking, keep the ecosystem sane. And similar as TONG, I am not only an association person, but I run my own business, which is a IT business solution provider company in a specialized sector, using blockchain technology for something meaningful. We might talk about this later, but I am wearing these two hats as the association chairman, as well as a CEO and founder of one blockchain-powered, young, innovation-driven enterprise in Malaysia. I settled down in Malaysia, married locally, and consider myself as more Malaysian as some Malaysians. Here you are.
Selamat pagi and good morning. He didn't say selamat pagi, so he's half Malaysian yet, not full Malaysian at the moment. Anyway, very good morning, and those who are coming here for the first time, welcome to Malaysia, and hope you have a great time in Malaysia. My name is Stan. I represent PCOM, which is the National ICT, the Association of the National ICT Industry in Malaysia. We are the voice of the industry, so we look at things very much from a private sector perspective. While I think the topic today is going to be on regulations and whatnot, we shouldn't forget the fact that there's also the other segment, or the other side of the coin, which is the private sector. So PCOM is championing this in a very big way, harnessing, bringing the know-how, the knowledge, the background, and perhaps giving the industry a chance to participate and make themselves a name for blockchain, in the blockchain market in the world. On a personal level, I run a company called Iron Horse Asia. Don't ask me why I call it Iron Horse Asia. It's a long story. I won't have time to tell you that. But nonetheless, I focus on two industries, which is financial and retail. And so with that, I'll probably share some case studies, what's happening in Malaysia, maybe give you some ideas, and perhaps stimulate that position for you. So with that, thank you very much.
So definitely we see we have actually a large topic touching everything from blockchain, digital assets. So maybe I thought of just introducing some of these elements here. So we can see that we have blockchain, which is the technology, and a large number of countries actually are not looking to regulating the core technology, but some of the elements of it, like digital assets, which is like cryptocurrency, ICO tokens, and some of the collectibles. Then we also have also regulations are looking towards regulating these digital asset exchanges and also ICOs. So definitely we can start forward from ALDEN. Sorry, I keep wrongly pronouncing your name, ALDEN. So maybe you can start about what's going on in Philippines and how the regulatory framework is there.
Okay. In the Philippines right now, there are two bodies making the regulations. Okay. One is our central bank, which regulates virtual currency exchanges for the Philippine market. Now, if you operate within the Philippine market, the central bank, since it recognizes that it does not have a full grasp on the extent of a virtual currency exchange, what it does is it only regulates companies in terms of registration. So they want corporations who intend to do VCEs in the Philippines to register, but only to that extent. They're not really, they haven't reached the point where they can issue regulations to actually improve on the industry. So that's for the central bank. Now, another interesting, I think the more interesting part of how the Philippines is taking virtual currency exchanges to the next step is through the Cagayan Economic Zone Authority. Now, in the Philippines, there are several economic zones set up, which the main purpose of these economic zones is to actually establish export-oriented businesses. So if you register in CEZA as a VCE, you won't actually be engaging in the Philippine market, but you'll be offering your product offshore. Now, since there is a recognition that virtual currency will be a big thing, but there is also an acceptance by the Philippine government that they are not yet ready to issue all the regulations. The CESA, through the initiative of CESA, all the primary holders of virtual currency exchange licenses that are registered in CESA have adopted a self-regulating organization whereby we have a constant communication with the regulators and we give a lot of our inputs in how to improve the system. Let me just give you an example. When this whole idea of a virtual currency exchange started in CESA about in the second quarter of 2018, they charged a transaction fee for all companies, I think on a 0.1% for all transactions. And that's huge. I think a lot of us know that, right? But since we've communicated to them, we've explained to them that this business will not exist or will not improve if we don't fix that, they've given us, through constant negotiation, an opportunity by lowering their rates in terms of transaction fees. So I guess this is what I want to say to everyone, that in the Philippines, there is a push, a recognition that virtual currency exchanges can help in economic development, but at the same time, they want to regulate it. And they recognize the help or the input of all these virtual currency exchange companies to help improve their systems. So hopefully this is something that we can also see in a regional and in the worldwide stage.
So I mean, we can see the way Philippines actually dealt with this issue to be really mature. They decided to, one, look in the industry, decided to talk with them, and then look into regulating it. And I think there's something that definitely we can learn from Philippines, and also maybe have some sort of knowledge transfers in future on seeing, or maybe some regulatory discussions to see how we actually can maybe bring some of this, the operation methods and the policies where we can actually share them or learn from them. And maybe next week we'll talk about what is happening in Japan actually. So Japan has always definitely been one of the leaders in the market on providing regulation into cryptocurrency payments. So maybe KOHEI can enlighten us with what is the current ecosystem and the current regulation stand in Japan.
Okay, I'd like to give you the two views about the crypto and digital assets. I guess the digital asset and crypto is a totally different. So when it comes to the talk about, you said the crypto regulation is coming for the license to the exchange. It could be the legalized operation of business in the domestic market. So this means the kind of the progressions, once you started something new, like through the fiat to crypto, you can do the business. But this is also the needed to be following the government law, the requirement. You have to protect the consumers who buy something through the exchange. This is a very big enforcement. You need to make an investment for the crypto exchange to be clear. It's more safe regarding to the money laundering or something. This is pretty important. So the license means has opportunities to do the business in local, but they need to make more disclosures when they want to run in a business here. So this is the part of it. The digital asset, it's been a very different angles. Like when you making a tokenize the real asset or something, you have to think about not only for the crypto, but also you have to make communications with the legal ministries. So this is a key part of it. Regarding the crypto, we just under the jurisdiction of the financial service agencies, but for the digital assets, you have to go to other jurisdictions as well, making a multiple communication. This is a very big hurdles. So sometimes the people is talking about the digital asset is coming the next, like security token offering or something, but we have to make it clear. What do you want to make in a digitalized asset? If it needs to make an approval from multiple commitment. This takes a lot of the times because each of the jurisdiction has a different angles. Even the economic ministry is trying to make a leadership, but the other ministry is against. It's not working. This is sometimes happens in sandbox rules in Japan. So the crypto has been quite an advantage for specific license or something, but the following like digital asset tokenized, this is a little bit very complicated. We have to figure out what do you want to make in a business, what the jurisdiction could be the better to make a communication for us in Japan.
I mean, definitely there will be a sort of a learning curve and a lot of understanding have to be there in the form of regulation and how we want to deal with these assets, because digital asset is definitely a large field already, and it's getting more and more bigger in the space of blockchain and DLT. So I think moving on next, we can definitely see Hong Kong being one of the financial leaders mostly in the financial sectors, and have played a global role in bringing technology adoptions in the finance industry. So what do you see what do you see the Hong Kong regulation doing with blockchain? And maybe you want to share about what are the current steps and what are they considering in terms of regulation?
Okay, Hong Kong, as many of you know, is one of the fiercest economies in the world. Ranks very high in terms of economic freedom. It's also part of China, but it also has a different set of laws. So when China banned cryptocurrency trading in September 4th of 2017, and also banned other like crypto mining, a lot of these companies from China, the largest crypto exchanges from China, came to Hong Kong and also to other parts of the world. Some of them went to Japan, I know, like OKCoin, Huobi, Binance. They tried to apply for a Japanese license. They haven't gotten it yet, but we went into Japan. We spent over 100 million Hong Kong. We acquired a controlling stake in that one of the 16 licenses. I know many of them are going to the Philippines, for example. I think OKCoin spent close to $1 million to acquire a CESA license. Binance, they are trying to get a Malta license. Gibraltar Exchange also very active in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is a very hotbed for fundraising. Hong Kong has been ranked #1 in terms of IPO fundraising in the world, #1 for capital market, and also in terms of ICO and STO. Hong Kong is also emerging as a big place. Hong Kong's SAR government also very free. Pretty much there's been a lot of ICOs in Hong Kong. So the government just requires the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission requires that the project must present a legal opinion letter by a local law firm to basically prove that this does not violate any SFC, Hong Kong's security laws. And so most of the utility tokens had no problem. So Hong Kong only banned one ICO, which is a company called Blackcell, and they promised to convert their token into securities in the future or profit share in the future. So that was the only one that was banned among many other ICOs. So recently with the STO, I think Hong Kong is also, the SFC announced new rules, sandbox regulation on virtual asset fund management. So I think Hong Kong would allow in the sandbox the brokers and token funds, cryptocurrency funds to be set up in Hong Kong. This is still going through sandbox regulation, so you can go and work with the government and let them monitor you. I think eventually this will lead to a full license at some point. So that's, and coming from China, a lot of, we are also working with the blockchain associations from China. As you know, in China, the government only wants blockchain. They ban all issuance of cryptocurrency. They think only the government can issue crypto. So I think that's why so many projects in China, they can only work on blockchain R&D, but if they want to do anything regarding issuance of token, ICO or STO, they come to Hong Kong or Singapore or CESA, other parts of the world.
So, I mean, a little time in Hong Kong, actually, I noticed the scene is totally different there. The speed of change, the speed of investment is definitely much faster than we see this region, maybe even, I think it's even much hotter than Singapore, is what I noticed over there. And we can see the number of Chinese investors that are there focusing on only blockchain-based applications is also large comparing to other regions in the world. So, coming back to Malaysia, since we took a long tour between many different countries. So our friend from Malaysia, RENE, so maybe we were taken by surprise early this year when suddenly we got an announcement that the government is focusing on bringing up regulation and releasing some regulatory frameworks on how to regulate the crypto space, the exchanges, and also ICOs. I think we will be having our ICO framework by end of March, most probably. So maybe RENE, you want to talk about that? And how did the industry actually receive this information, and what are your comments on that actually?
Thank you, HARPREET. Okay, so in Malaysia, there was this, Malaysia was very heavily hit by the financial crisis 20 years ago. 20 years ago, in the late 90s, the government then had to take some measures how to protect not only the Malaysian, but even the investors from overseas into Malaysia. And seemingly this protective agenda of the two regulatory bodies, being the Securities Commission and the National Bank, is still ongoing. That protection of the national interests and the citizens is above the drive for innovation and embracing these new technologies and freedoms these technologies bring. So Malaysia has shown now, especially since that February announcement about regulations, upcoming regulations, or certainly we can call it bans almost, regarding cryptocurrency exchanging in Malaysia. Since that time, it's even becoming a more protective environment. I could shortly mention what is happening right now in Malaysia. The situation, just to say before that, I think I don't need to educate you about the differences between blockchain and Bitcoin. Yeah, this cryptocurrency side, and then we have the blockchain part, which is an underlying technology which drives these interesting projects, like, for example, cryptocurrencies. So the blockchain technology itself is something what probably we won't need to fear regulations in the coming years. This is a technology like, let's call it the wheel, yes, or a combustion engine. But what we do with this technology, the applications, they have implications, and if those were dangerous, then there is regulations coming to prohibit or limit them. So now talking about the cryptocurrency or these tokens or digital assets, in Malaysia, since February, we have a problem. We can't exchange into or out of cryptocurrencies into fiat currency, into ringgit currency. There is a grace period now running for the exchanges, the digital asset exchanger companies, which had been operating either for Malaysia from within Malaysia or even from outside operating in Malaysia. Until 1st of March, they need to submit paperwork and registration to be part of the licensing, which will happen in March, so that there will be more than only what is that called? Reporting institutions. Actually, Alden mentioned that we have reporting institutions even over there in Philippines, where they need to register and report number of transactions. They need to subscribe to certain standards for suspicious transaction reporting. This is what we had in Malaysia until February. In Philippines, especially in the special zone, they have this right now like that. For us, it's now a stop. We cannot have the digital currency exchanges operating here right now. It was a surprise order coming from the Securities Commission, which we were quite upset with, that it came into force on the subsequent day, actually, of the announcement. And the handful of, or maybe it's 2 handfuls, maybe a dozen of companies who were operating in that sector, in that market segment here in Malaysia, had to immediately take measures. Meet with us as a lobbying body with the association, or even with the regulators to discuss the next steps. And now right now it's the last few days where submissions can be made to continue operating in Malaysia with a certain license for these digital asset exchanges. Talking about the on-ramps and off-ramps into the crypto sphere. It's not everything clear in this direction, and we will see a lot of interesting things happening in March. March will be the month where even we expect the Securities Commission to release something like a regulatory framework for fundraising approved by SC, like with prospectus, registered entities, but not a central depository like Bursa Malaysia, but the blockchain. We will see interesting things happening in March, but I can talk for hours. Let me give the word to Stan later too. Harpreet, Stan. Yes.
Sure, definitely I have some follow-up question afterwards, but we definitely would like to hear Stan on sharing about how does the industry perceive the technology and also coming towards digital assets. And I believe that you have some use cases and some that you would like to share about. So maybe you can go ahead and share the use cases and also your opinions on the question.
Thank you, Harpreet. Quite an interesting concept. If you look at from the Malaysian landscape of blockchain, I think Renata has mentioned some, but let me add some value to that as well. I think from the government framework or from the regulatory perspective, it is still work in progress. There are a number of bodies in the regulatory scheme or sphere, if I may use the word, are involved in this particular setting the standards for Malaysia on blockchain. The framework has been developed, it's been used, but however, on the other side of the coin, the private sector, what Harpreet alluded to the fact earlier, there are already some applications that have been developed using blockchain technology. And why, and I will share with you shortly. I think if you look beyond the cryptocurrency legion, if you look beyond that, one of the catalysts that spearheaded or pushed forward the blockchain development in Malaysia is the Islamic banking. Because what's happening is that the government is looking at this from a perspective, or the body responsible for Islamic banking is looking at from the perspective of how they can use blockchain and use this for permissible, I use the word permissible, areas of deploying blockchain, so that part and parcel of the Islamic banking could in fact sit on the blockchain technology. In fact, there is already a company that has developed. In fact, they are coming up with what we call the Sharia compliance blockchain for Islamic banking. There's another company that's already developed a mobile app using blockchain technology to collect zakat, for example. How this is channeled, how this is given out, where it's distributed. So the contents, the controls, the security of that is actually managed through this blockchain. So it's still, it's coming up, although we may not be aware. There's another company that this guy works for. It's called Lux Tech, from the retail perspective. What they've done, they've used blockchain technology, and they have created digital search ledgers, so that your search of original bags, expensive, high expensive bags, right? Luxury products, for example. Now you can't go and buy from Pasar Malam or from the night markets and things like that. So there is already an initiative. What Lux Tech is doing is they are actually meeting up with supply chain, with the manufacturers, how they can embed this and be part of the complete supply chain, so that they can reduce the imitation products, if I may use that, for high luxury goods. The other area that I can share with you from the commercial side is there is a company, a startup company, where they have actually used blockchain technology. It's a startup, 1337 BSCSB Ventures. They have developed an app. What their intent is that they want to use blockchain technology for global warming. They want to use this to help the government, to help companies, organizations to reduce carbon emissions. So which means that if you're part of the chain, and if you reduce and use less power, you will get carbon credits. And with carbon credits, it will be reduced, your bills will be reduced as you go forward. So there's also talk about this area, which Tanaga is working on. This is the other part of, RENE mentioned about Security Commission. Security Commission has engaged a company locally, and what they've done is they've actually they're developing a blueprint for those companies that do not, they are not in the regulatory listings. In fact, they're not part of the stock exchange. But they allow companies like that so that their shares could be traded. However, this is to give control to the brokers so that the system will be agnostic, which means the ledgers could be sitting between various ledgers, across ledgers, and yet there is control and visibility on the shares that's been traded by companies that are not under the regulatory, or rather the shares are under the regulatory. So there's so many developments that are going on in Malaysia. While we say that the framework is been fine-tuned, which is correct, the cryptocurrency aspects of that has been fine-tuned, that is correct, but at the same time, you find that the private sector has actually got up and started to do all sorts of development using blockchain technology. But last but not least, I must also say the company called NEM, NEM. They've set up their development center here in Malaysia. In fact, I believe part and parcel of their solution sits on NEM. They use what we call the EDWIN technology, which is actually open source, which allows the operating system and also how you can actually set your digital certs accordingly to have control over that. So anyway, they have opened that development center for companies, for startups to go and use that technology and develop apps. It is going in a big way. I sit on a particular board, I won't mention in detail, but what we're also looking at is how can the financial institutions look at blockchain and how can we deploy blockchain? Now, taking from that cue, if you look beyond the Malaysian borders, if you look at Korea, for example, South Korea, I must be very careful. It's not Korea, South Korea. Sorry, guys, South Korea. They have used blockchain extensively in the government services, in their government way that we're going to handle and manage. So Malaysia is looking at it because that's the reason why we have got a company called InchBlock that the Malaysian government is actually working very, very closely with. Last but not least, there's one other application that the government is working on. You know, we have the disbursement of the Rohingya refugees in Malaysia. I didn't realize the numbers were actually very big. What the Malaysian government is doing is they are spearheading, together with a team of people, they are creating a space using blockchain technology to allow the Rohingya refugees to register themselves as citizens, if I may use the word, not of Malaysia, but to be on that blockchain so that globally, every refugee Rohingya who's been diasporas from, they've been basically, you know the history, but to allow them to have the banking facility, to allow them to trade, exchange, skills, labor. So all that is actually happening right here in Malaysia. So you can see that it's in two-pronged. While regulatory is moving fast forward, in March you probably hear something, at the same time there are early movements in the commercial sector, plus also the government sector. And that's what I wanted to add.
Okay, I mean, we can definitely see there's a lot of activity going on in the space, mostly even from the mainstream industry, from the new crypto industries. Malaysia has actually always played a kind of a big role in the space of blockchain and cryptocurrencies as well. We have some of the global players. I think we should, didn't mention that, I thought of just highlighting that. We have like Etherscan, which is also based out of Malaysia. We have Hello Gold, which is one of the ways you can invest into golds. Then we have companies like CoinGecko, who's also based out of here. So we have always been in the scene in terms of global crypto players. And now we can also see a lot of our government participating actively to see how they can use this to better govern, better facilitate services. Yes?
I just want to make a comment. I think that's interesting, but I think what we also need to note, sorry, HARPREET, if I may jump in. Yeah. Malaysia is not on the world map of blockchain. Yes. While in the absence of that, what they have done is they've used an angle from Islamic banking to use that and bring that, because, Malaysia's always been forefront in halal food technologies, for example, and all that. They have made a name out of it. And they're using this to put their foot on the global map. So this is where I think the government is putting a lot of emphasis in. Just wanted to add that value.
I mean, definitely, we have tried, not only tried, we were one of the Islamic finance leaders globally. And we talk about trust, we talk about transparency, we talk about fairness, then definitely we talk about blockchain. And Islamic finance is based on most of these fundamentals. So we need a technology that support that. So definitely moving on. But before that, Rene, I actually had a question on that. So we have like some of the requirements for licensing for digital asset exchange that actually came out recently. But what do you think about the requirements? Do you think, because we already have like about 43 registered entities, but I know there's about 50 or something, which some of them are not even registered yet, but there are new ones coming up into the space. But the requirements kind of like hit them hard in terms that a lot of them were not expecting that. So what do you think from, as playing as an association member who's actually bringing all this company together, so what are these companies talking about? Yeah.
Well, there was even requirements like 5 million ringgit in reserves to be blocked. Then, of course, you need your compliance officers and all these things like becoming a small bank, right? So this is something what the industry had not expected to be that harsh. A few players are trying to bargain somewhat with the Securities Commission. As I said, it will be a very interesting month in March to see what comes out. But another thought, what is applicable to share right now, again, I'm looking at Philippines and their special economic zone. They are looking to be an offshore center for these digital asset exchanges to possibly migrate from the complicated places towards the more easygoing places. So this is something what is happening. We saw with Binance leaving China. I think, are they in Malta now? Or yeah, Malta. So migration of these digital corporations is quite fast. It takes days. It's not like you're moving a Mercedes plant from somewhere to somewhere else. So this could happen that some of these exchanges move to places where it is more applicable. But there's a big but. Because this registration or the requirements now even state that companies not having an establishment in Malaysia but doing business in Malaysia would probably even fall under similar regulations. And then we might have this like fear happening now of this geo-blocking, that people with a Malaysian IP address cannot access other countries' services anymore. And we've brought this up to the Securities Commission, and they say that that is not on their purview right now to block Malaysians if they wanted to use foreign, not registered, not in Malaysia legally accessible services. Let the Malaysians do it. But if it grows too much, we might then go after the foreign entities. Well, then the foreign entities might decide to do some blocking, not our beloved Malaysian IP blocking, censorship, something, but the foreign companies. So there is still this unclarity, and whether Malaysia is an interesting enough market for the big boys in the world to pay 5 million to a Malaysian bank account towards SC, I don't know yet. But I foresee that something will happen in March, and I think that we will not see the end of crypto exchanges and digital asset exchanges in Malaysia in March. There will be, yeah, it's a beginning of a shift towards a maybe more healthy and somewhat regulated ecosystem. It's not close the door and go away.
Yeah, but there's usually a barrier between regulation, good regulation, and too much of regulation, right? So usually here where it comes in, when you see some countries like Philippines, which is kind of attractive at the moment, to where you actually can go up and set up your exchanges. You have the talent, we have what they call in a way good, what they call Philippine talent, which is already available there. You have good locations to actually run, to operate your business at. Then you have good regulatory clarity. Why would not any good business who want to be in the space operate out of Philippines, right? So maybe you can highlight on that, and how is it benefiting Philippines by having a clearer regulation?
Well, for our part, I think I can speak on behalf of the company that the Philippines really did take advantage of the fact that a lot of these other territories are starting to close down on the whole crypto industry. So when that trend started to happen, maybe first quarter of 2018 or the last quarter of 2017, the Philippines really did take advantage through CESA by offering offshore virtual currency exchanges. But it doesn't mean that since the Philippines is opening its doors for virtual currency exchanges, it doesn't mean that it's taking its hands off them in terms of regulation. Terrorism and money laundering are global problems. And I think these are, and through CESA, they're trying to establish regulations to ensure that money laundering and terrorist financing is prevented. And maybe this logic or this way of thinking can be shared again in the regional scale, because these problems are shared by every one of us. So if we don't create systems where we can properly check and regulate this problem, I mean, if it fails in the Philippines, definitely it's going to happen worldwide. So, so what we're asking for maybe is for government to listen to us, help us and create these regulations, because we're open to this. We're open for government to regulate these exchanges, because we believe that despite the fact that we're trying to decentralize everything, we still have to rely on traditional institutions like the government to give integrity to these new corporations. And I hope by the private sector and the government working together, we can achieve this goal.
I mean, definitely we have much to learn in even terms of our regulation, and also maybe there's some sort of collaboration and learning that we can do from each other governments as well. And I will say that Philippines is also playing a major role in terms of AML and ATF. I believe they are hosting this year's summit to be one of the large summits in counterterrorism financing, basically. So which is going to be one huge one in the end of the year, where they're focusing towards trying to discuss on how they can improve some of these things. So these are not drawbacks towards the technology or regulation. Yes, they want to be part of it, but at the same time, they're trying to listen what's going on in the space. So maybe we can hear about from Japan as well, and also from Hong Kong, since we are running out of time. Maybe we can have both of your opinions on how, what do you see the direction of regulation, and how will the regulation evolve? Because if you really look into regulating a technology, it should be regulatory technology. It's not only about building up sets and blocks of how you actually can govern it, but over time, technology is evolving really fast, and regulation have to keep up with it. So I think the next phase of, we will be seeing a lot of RegTech and government involvement in technology, and it's already started. We can see innovation departments in a lot of regulatory bodies. So maybe you want to comment on that, and how do you see the regulation evolving in Japan and also in Hong Kong later on with Tony?
Okay, we Japan is started for running the specific crypto regulation for the exchange to run the business official. But I guess the business opportunities shift more kind of the diversified blockchain adoptions, not only for the government, but also the business opportunities. In order to make sure that these trends, we have to think about the data integrities, how it happens when it comes to the trading of each of the data between a different jurisdiction. We have to think about it. So the data standardization is the one of the upcoming discussion, how we can use this data into the government. This is the part of the RegTech, but still it's in the beginning. In particular, the Japanese government is trying to become a digital, like to use the paperwork, transform it into the digital processes. This is the one of the initial footprint. But this is a very early stage. We have to think about it's not only for the single countries, but we also multiple operations, how it works between the countries, like from Hong Kong to Japan, like the Japan to Malaysia, the countries. So this is a pretty important thing. The blockchain is not discussion, the one single nations. It's just kind of multiple communications. So the trend is shift to focus on how we can make a benefit, each of us to do something good things. So that's kind of making the communities beyond the government is pretty important to share the knowledge, the demands, the needs, how we can overcome if we have any specific issues. through the cooperation. So that's a trend, I guess, in 2019. So that's why we have to make sure that how we can work together through these opportunities.
Yeah, definitely we need something to fall back and refer to, and if there's a community, it helps the government to ask the questions. Definitely Hong Kong. What do you think?
Hong Kong, as I said earlier, is the capital, fundraising mecca capital for the world, from IPO to now the crypto world. So especially China has a very strict ban on this cryptocurrency. So many companies are coming to Hong Kong for fundraising.
So we can, do you have?
Just one quick comment. Very quick comment, because I know we're in no time. There's not much time to talk on this. There's a good news and the bad news. The bad news is blockchain technology is moving very fast. So there's a catch-up going on. But the good news is the government has actually started to say, this is where I'm going to draw the line as far as the framework is concerned, then add on those values afterwards to compass with that. But the good thing is the government is also involved in some of the blockchain. So that helps the country and helps everybody, man on the street. On the other side of the coin, associations available for those who are interested to look at how you can deploy. There's special interest group form on blockchain, so you can actually get in touch with PCOM on that and find out and be part of that blockchain community. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Just to kind of like end up on the point over there. So a lot of governments are also looking into agile regulation. So what if we can, instead of just putting one and drawing one line and thinking after 5 years that what we did wrong in the base of the business sector, a lot of governments are looking into setting up sandbox, testing the industry, and later trying to be more agile on regulation. And then after, when they're already mainstream and they're still keeping kind of some sort of tabs on seeing how they can improve. So I think that is some approaches that some of the regulators are taking well. But as I also commented earlier, that maybe innovation needs innovation in regulation as well. So we have our times is actually basically up, and we'll be around. And I will definitely like to thank the panel for sharing all the valuable points and all your sites. And I think we'll end it here. So MC, you can take it over. Okay, yeah, for questions.
I think this is questions from the floor. Yes, maybe. Yes.
My name is Azizi. I'm with Food Chain. I just want some clarification on the digital asset. Do you call it a commodity or a security? Because there is some implication. Because in the US, they call it commodity under the Mercantile Chicago Exchange. Whereas in this part of the world, they call it security, which is under Securities Commission. So what is the implication of the, between these two interpretations?
In Hong Kong, I know there are separate category, which is virtual assets, which is not security in Hong Kong. That's why they require a legal opinion letter for ICO crypto issuance to state that this is not a security, it's a virtual currency, a virtual asset.
Just a comment, quite correct. I think there was a huge discussion on that, and thank you for the question. It is actually a virtual asset. However, you need to secure that. So it has got a fine line, but in its own standing, it is actually falls in the commodity, if I may use that loosely.
Okay, I guess in Japan, it's, the Japanese Financial Services Agency has released one announcement. That is not specific when it happens, but they try to be separated, the exchange of payment. Regarding the digital assets, it's up to the expectations, but I guess it could be the exchange rule. It's a separated payment, but we are not define it happens in the future.
As a developer, I'll say that the approach might be wrong, because if you really look into it, they are programmable codes. I can make a security, I can make a utility, I can make what they call some sort of assets, I can make currencies, I can make collectibles, I can make multiple things. So in putting up all of them under one classification will be just like blocking a lot of the innovation in the space. So if I will say that if any regulators are here or anybody's listening from here, you should be taking the classification of what is being developed or what is the category, and state that this is the category that I want to regulate. So let's say if it falls and it has the features of a security, then this is what I want you to do. If it has the, what they call forms and features of utility, this is what I want to do. So I think from a developer's perspective and the innovator's perspective, it's restrictive when you say that you're going to be only regulating the whole industry and whole asset in one particular type of regulation. Yeah. Yes.
From a commercial perspective, it is a commodity overall, because it is a combination of everything of those.
Actually, just after that regulation, that surprise regulation came out in February, our association went with a delegation to the Securities Commission to ask about a clarification of the wording. Because the wording was a bit confusing for many in Malaysia, and people thought, wow, all crypto tokens are now securities. There was a big confusion, and we went to confront the Securities Commission directly with a question. Excuse me, are all crypto tokens securities? No. The answer is no. Okay? And so then we went on in discussions. Another question was, are bitcoins securities or commodities or what? It depends on the intention for use of the bitcoin. You buy a bitcoin because you want to spend it to pay for a website hosting or whatever. It's not a security. You purchase it in order to do transactional clearing of any kind, not a security. If you purchased it for investment purposes upfront with that intention, it could be a security if certain preconditions are met. And then about these preconditions, still we remained in unclarity with the Securities Commission. So just mentioning, not all crypto tokens are securities. And from the perspective of the industry, it is more towards a commodity. But this is something what 2019 will have to bring clarity about.
But I'm not sure how they are planning to record intentions.
Yeah, exactly, yes. Even for your bookkeeping, you say, today I bought the Bitcoin, that Bitcoin with that intention, this Bitcoin, another intention. That confusion, unfortunately, remains for the, hopefully, only next weeks.
Maybe we can, is there any other question? Or
yes,
is
next
there any
question.
more comment?
Yes.
Yes.
Or if, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
The gentleman in the back, if you could deliver the microphone.
Hi, okay, I'm Izan. Okay, I totally agree with you guys on in terms of the governance and how it should be, pointed to certain usage and whatnot. But I'd like to ask, particularly for Malaysia, in Malaysia, is there any sort of approaches that, for example, PICOM or any of the associations can do to somewhat collaborate and work together with the government to further strengthen the governance of this, or further define it in such a manner that it would then be usable for all. So, yeah.
That's a very good point. I mentioned earlier about the SIG, which is the Special Interest Group. There is a group that's formed between PICOM, and one of the goals or the chapter of that is to understand what is happening on the side of the government in terms of the governance, the framework, so that they can take that and then relay that to the so-called the user community or the business community, or those that want to get involved in developing of using blockchain technology for any app for that matter. So there's a big tie-up between the two. In fact, we work very closely with the government. And sometimes the government do ask the private sector, through PICOM sometimes, ask if they're going to do this, are there any feedbacks, are there any inputs, are there any concerns, for example. And this is where I think over the last year or so, there's been a lot of revolving movement in terms of setting this up from the association point of view. That was the reason why I said earlier, it's good to go to a body where you can probably get more information, because it is a way that you want to be a part of the community, so to speak.
Thank you very much, Stan. We're running out of time, unfortunately. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this wonderful panel discussion to start today's World Blockchain Summit. Let's give them a big round of applause. If you have any more questions to the panelists, they will be available here, so please feel free to speak to them.